Let's end with the hardest ask of all. Not the raise, not the promotion, not the better job title, flex arrangement, or project leadership role. The hardest negotiation is the one that doesn't look like a negotiation because it's invisible. We are talking about emotional labor, the checking in, the remembering, the smoothing over, the calendar managing, tension diffusing, birthday remembering, thank you writing, fritz talking, encouragement giving, vibe watching, burnout preventing non-stop second shift of modern womanhood. And unless we name it, claim it, and consciously negotiate it, it will silently bankrupt us. So, what is emotional labor? If Rothsky's book Fair Play brought this term back into focus in a modern, domestic context, she defines emotional labor as the invisible work of keeping others comfortable, functioning, and supported. It shows up in both personal and professional settings. It looks like anticipating other people's needs before they're expressed, absorbing discomfort to keep the peace, being the reliable one without being formally recognized, becoming the de facto counselor, morale booster, reminder system, or office mom. It is work. It is unpaid. And it's not evenly distributed. Are you curious why women do more of it without even realizing? From a young age, girls are trained to monitor others' feelings, to soothe, to host, to guess what's needed and deliver it before it's requested. By adulthood, this becomes reflexive. And in workplaces or households where structure is weak or leadership is absent, women fill the gap, often at great personal cost, especially neurodivergent women. Because masking, emotional attunement, and trying to earn belonging can make us default to overfunctioning in emotional labor roles. Step 1. See it to name it. Start by making the invisible visible. If Rothsky's Fair Play card system includes over 100 household and emotional labor tasks that can be sorted, shared, and tracked, here's a partial list tailored to professional women at work, remembering birthdays or team milestones, mediating conflicts between colleagues, noticing who's left out and trying to include them, following up on others' behalf, being the listener when someone's upset, at home, noticing when the detergent is low, being responsible for everyone's calendar, buying and wrapping gifts, comforting family after hard days without reciprocation, reminding others to do their part. Ask yourself, what are you carrying emotionally that no one sees? What decisions are you quietly making that deplete you? Step 2. Decide what not to carry anymore. Here's the radical act. You don't have to keep doing it just because you're good at it. Groover teaches power isn't about dominance. It's about knowing where your energy belongs. Let go of rescuing people from their discomfort. Being the first to volunteer because silence makes you anxious. Over-accommodating to prove your value. Acting as the workplace conscience, therapist, or emotional cleanup crew. You can still be generous. You can still be kind. You just don't have to be the container for everyone else's mess. Step 3. Prepare your negotiation, emotional labor edition. Just like salary, emotional labor can be negotiated. But it requires an internal agreement first, I am not responsible for everyone's emotional comfort. My time and attention are finite. I will choose where to spend them. I do not need to overgive to be valued. Then, have conversations that reassign, reschedule, or retire emotional labor roles. Examples: I'd like us to create a shared family calendar so I'm not the only one tracking appointments. I've noticed I'm always the one checking in on team morale. Let's rotate that responsibility monthly. Can we make a list of shared household tasks and each choose the ones we'll fully own? Ownership is key. Not just doing the task, but thinking, planning, and following through on it without being managed. Step 4. Negotiate emotional labor in the workplace. This is next level, but it's essential. Here's how to start. 1. Document the emotional labor you do, especially when it serves the team but isn't part of your role description. 2. Quantify it if you can. Time spent, results achieved, problems solved. 3. Include it in performance reviews or promotion conversations. 4. Propose ways to share it or reassign it with a leadership lens. Examples: I've been the go-to for onboarding emotional support and team culture. I'd love to formalize that into a role or rotate it with others so we all share the load. Morale is a strategic asset. I suggest we make it part of team planning, not just informal catch-up.